be the most important thing that Braverman can do here to actually try and just put Baylock in a spot where he has to answer every single card or fall so far behind that he'll just die.
And on the other side here, we do have Deshaun Baylock on an interesting twist on the Bant-Ram deck that emerged at the Players Tour last week, splashing Kenrith the Return King as its mid-game threat. You see Ketria Triumph there kind of enabling some of the other modes of activation on Kenrith, but Triumph is a good card to have in your mana base anyway, so that feels like a free roll.
Right, this is a spot where it is just basically a 2-color cycle land.
Yeah, and we see Braverman. He has the oven. He has another oven. He doesn't have the cat yet. So he does have a butcher that can maybe apply some early pressure, but Aethergust going to stop that from running away with the game by itself.
Right, and this is the type of thing where the Aethergust, Mystical Dispute, and so on are seeing as much play as they are because there are just so many efficient gold cards that make them not really have the drawback of being narrow.
Mm-hmm. So we see a Shadow the Sky in Baylock's hand against a very aggressive Rakdos Knights deck. Often that's a game-ending card. How relevant is it against this kind of more resilient, recursive sacrifice deck?
It's going to depend on the texture of Braverman's draw in a lot of instances, but here it feels like the card is just going to be used to try and buy Baylock time rather than actually just putting the game away.
Mm-hmm. And second oven there from Braverman, got some redundant sacrifice outlets for that butcher if it comes to that.
And this is a spot where Baylock now either gets to try and roll up the Teferi, keep protecting it, or go ahead and cash it in to just bounce this butcher.
Mm-hmm. And instead of playing a tap land in the temple or a shock land tap, he's choosing to leave open the Fable Passage for the instant speed Shadow of the Sky. Do you make anything of that as well?
Yeah, so here it just looks like, for the most part, that Baylock is just choosing between just casting the Shadows of the Sky at instant speed or going ahead and developing tap lands.
Mm-hmm. How greedy can he afford to be with that sweeper effect?
Really, just getting a clean 2-for-1 and setting Braverman back 2 turns worth of mana is probably what he just wants to do here. A lot of the time, if you give a butcher more time on the battlefield, it's just going to become worse for you.
Yeah, this is already a pretty formidable board, especially if you're trying to set up a Planeswalker where it's just going to get attacked down pretty quickly. And Butcher picks off the Teferi, and there will be an abundance of food in case Braverman ever does draw a Cauldron Familiar.
And Braverman actually a regular on the SCG Tour with, I believe, 2 invitational top 8s to his name.
Yeah, Braverman, he's not someone who keeps a high profile for himself, but if you've been grinding a lot, you go to all these events, you see him around, and you've probably lost to him a few times as well.
Exactly.
And Nissa's stock has fallen a little bit in the past few months, but showing here just how easily it can run away with games if you get an opening.
Right, a 3/3 may not be the largest thing in a world of Uros, but it is the largest thing in a world of serrated scorpions.
But, to be fair, most things are the largest thing in a world of serrated scorpions. But
bold to assume.
Yes. So we'll see Serrated Scorpion here, and we see the quick graveyard check for that Call of the Death Dweller. He can pair the oven with a Scorpion and then get the Scorpion and the Butcher back, which maybe, do you think that's better than the Worst Rider here?
Yeah, I think this is just great because we see Braverman realizing that attacking is not going to be much of an option from here. And so Braverman is leaning into the reach that's granted to him by these creatures.
And we shouldn't forget the counter ability from Call the Death Dweller too. Often used to give Death Touch and Mayhem Devil or to Dreadhorde Butcher itself or to Judith in this deck as well. So if you forget about that part of the text on the card, you will be in for a rude awakening in all likelihood.
Oh yeah, people have played all kinds of things like Status Statue to try and give Mayhem Devil Death Touch. Having a card that does it and is just a good card on its face, that's just great for this type of strategy.
I remember some early Pioneer hype with Goblin Chainwhirler, where the Death Touch really does a number on the opponent's board.
So how's that for a scry top? Tomio, Collector of Tales.
Yeah, that's an excellent card here. Is there, I guess, returning the Shadow of the Sky is like maybe a good insurance policy, or if you're not under pressure, you could start ticking up. But what do you think he would be digging for in that situation?
So here in this situation, it would just be more sweepers. Uro would be a great card to find here to just continue growing the gap between his life total and 0. Those are the first things that spring to mind.
The beauty of digging for Uro is you don't even have to name Uro. You can look for something else, and then it's just incidental that it conveniently ends up exactly where you need it.
Exactly.
So Gross Battle giving Baylock a redraw. Gets out Tamio. Oh, are we? Okay, I thought we might have a dangerous auto tabber situation here, but Nissa will let him cast out Tamio. Baylock pondering. We'll see what he will name here. Aethergust. That's a swing and a miss.
One of the cleanest ways to reset a Dreadhorde Butcher.
Absolutely. And by the time it goes back on top, replaying as the 1/1 is not appealing to Braverman at that point.
Exactly. This is just quickly reaching the point of the game where Braverman needs to slam the door shut, or Baylock is just going to run away with this. Baylock's cards are worth more pound for pound, and trading them like this is not actually a long-term strategy for Braverman.
What ways does he have to shut the door? Does he need a single card or maybe a combination of cards to string that last 10 damage together?
So Dreadhorde Butcher is one of the great cards at doing that sort of thing. Judith, the Scourge Diva, huge thing at just being able to make everything worth at least 1 or 2 points. You could even look at Cauldron Familiar, Mayhem Devil. There's a lot going on here that Braverman could find off the top of his library.
Yeah, I guess with Woe Strider and is that 4 food on the battlefield? Yeah, Cauldron Familiar is just a fireball, effectively.
Yeah, exactly, since you can just retain priority with the cat in the graveyard and keep sacrificing food to create more pings. It really just feels like Braverman is just 1-2 cards away from slamming the door shot. But if Baylock has anything to say about it, Braverman doesn't have a ton of time to do it.
Yeah, with that in mind, do you think Braverman should be kind of aggressively sacrificing his creatures to Scribe the Roast Rider, digging for some of those effects?
At this point, I would be pretty interested in sacrificing the goat, but I don't think I really want to sacrifice the Dreadhorde Butcher when it does have the ability to continue growing.
Mm-hmm. And a replacement to Fairy Time Raveler. I imagine just looking to cycle him and draw a card and keep digging for. I guess what is he digging for? We saw him name Aethergust with Tamio, but has that priority changed recently?
It's going to depend on what is in Baylock's graveyard and what he thinks he actually needs to find. At this point, you can't hit an Uro and escape it, but something like Aethergust is going to give you insurance against Judith and against Mayhem Devil.
And yeah, it looks like Teferi minuses targeting the Dreadhorde Butcher. Braveman does get to sacrifice it in response, thereby fizzling the card draw from Teferi. So a nice trick there. And he gets a scry, gets to dig towards the Cauldron Familiar, the Mayhem Devil, which is what he really needs at this point to get back in the game.
Right, and this is that inevitability that Nissa provides in these games, is even without a ton of life gain, there's still just so much going on here.
And Tamio minuses to return the Teferi. I guess Braverman can also just get aggressive here too. There's a lot of food which can buy him time, and the goat could maybe jump in front of something. But there are 3/3/3s on the board. Nissa's adding to that every turn, and Braverman's life total is not that high.
Yeah, exactly. Baylock is not just trying to get across the finish line in incremental chunks. We're going to see Baylock attacking for 9, 12, 15, and so on. It looks like Braverman's weighing if he wants to sacrifice this Woe Strider to the oven to deny the card draw from Time Raveler.
But he doesn't. What do you make of that choice?
The big thing here is that he doesn't want to spend all of his mana on Woe Strider this turn.
If only he could play a vanilla 5/5 right now.
That would really just swing the tide, wouldn't it?
Admittedly, the mighty Serrated Scorpion.
Baylock is in range for the Serrated Scorpion that Braverman found off the top to actually make a difference here.
Yeah, but back when these Rakdos sacrifice decks had Lurrus as their companion in some builds, you could just go off with Serrated Scorpion, just replaying that and sacrificing that one every turn. Ooh, Elspeth Conquer's Death is potentially big.
Right, that is one that is going to, well, maybe not permanently deal with the Woe Strider, but it does at least buy you another turn from it being able to attack or block, which is just an extra turn of attacking with all of your lands with impunity.
And it's nice, too, that the mana generation from Nissa allows Baylock to play Elspeth Conquer's Death and another card in the same turn, or just play it and attack with all of his 3/3s from Nissa.
And something that Baylock actually has in his main board is Planar Cleansing, which is something that would absolutely blow the doors off this game.
Yeah, we mentioned the effect of Ugin the Spirit Dragon in these mid-range mirrors, and Planar Cleansing in this context would be an even better version of that.
Right, obviously it would blow up Baylock's Planeswalkers, but when you have a bunch of 3/3s in play, you just can't. You just assume you're going to come out ahead in a creature fight against 1/2s and 2/2s.
And like with Ugin, those 3/3 lands do survive the sweeper effect.
Exactly.
Yeah, that seems like a very smart choice on Baylock's part. Just having that one slot in your deck changes the texture of these matchups so dramatically, and it's often your opponents will play around it incorrectly, or it gives you a plan that you can always build towards in those late games.
Right, and Tomio just gives you so much selection in that spot as well.
Yeah, it's got to be close to 20 cards in his deck just off the Tamio alone.
Exactly, right.
So this is it. Braverman needs something very impressive right now. Basic Swamp is not it. Sorry to say. So it looks like game 1 will go to Deshaun Baylock, which this is a matchup, my understanding typically was, you were happy as Rakdos Sacrifice to be carried against Ban. Do you think that's still the case? And if so, that seems like a pretty big win for Baylock to steal game 1 here.
Yeah, this is a situation where Braverman just wasn't able to find any of his reach to put the game away, and Baylock has got to be feeling good about stealing this first game, despite drawing some cards that honestly were pretty clunky, right? Elspeth Conquer's Death wasn't nearly as exciting here as it is in most contexts.
Yeah, that card is oddly polarizing against these decks, where sometimes you need to tag a Mayhem Devil or you lose on the spot, but then sometimes they have like a cat and an oven and a Dreadhorde Butcher, and it literally doesn't have any targets at all. So yeah, that will be the end of game 1 here. So as we move to sideboarding, who do you think stands to improve the most from these sweat traps?
So I imagine the big winner here is going to be Baylock, just Deshaun Baylock, just on the back of getting more anti-aggro tools into the deck. Dream Trawler is one that can be big as just a big lifelink threat, seeing more sweepers in Planar Cleansing, getting any Mystical Dispute that might be in the library out of there. I would expect things like Narset, Porter of the Veils to maybe be a bit less attractive.
Do you have any interest in Kenrith, where, game 1, it seemed like Baylock was ahead on board. The only way Braverman could win would be to go around that, burn him out with Cauldron Familiars and Mayhem Devils. You're getting 10 life a turn, then that's off the table.
Right, and this is a situation where we see 4 Nissa Who Shakes the World in Deshaun Baylock's list here. That is a loud message.
This is definitively a Nissa deck, for sure.
Right, a lot of these decks have just kind of been on 1, maybe 2 Nissas. This is really trying to capitalize on her mana doubling.
And really worth noting, for a long time, Nissa and Hydrocrisis went hand in hand. You wouldn't really see one without the other. 0 copies of Hydrocrisis in Baylock's deck. He thinks, look, I'm not interested in Crisis, just casting it straight up. If I'm casting other stuff with Nissa, there's lots of options there. I want Nissa. Nissa's the thing I want. I don't want to be saddled down with these Crasises.
Exactly. It's just really looking to try and double spell with Nissa's mana rather than cast singular colossal spells.
Mm-hmm. And then for Braverman's side, it looks like Agonizing Remorse coming into the deck, shaving a Mayhem Devil, a Priest of Forgotten Gods, and the 4 Claim the Firstborn, which I guess they line up well against Uro, but not really anything else.
Yeah, when you see your opponent doesn't have any copies of Hydroid Crisis in their deck and only has a couple of copies of Uro, Claim the Firstborn's value decreases dramatically.
2 copies of Angrath's Rampage in Braverman's sideboard. Not a card you see too often, but it seems like it could have some applications there.
Yeah, it certainly is going to be fine against a Planeswalker heavy build from the deck that we're seeing here.
I guess it is rather awkward against Tamiyo Collector of Tales, is the only thing.
Ooh. Bright side, Agonizing Remorse getting around Tamiyo.
Oh, it looks like Claim the Firstborn is still on the deck.
Hey, may just be the 4th copy. Wanting to have some respect for those Nissa lands as well. Just use it as a mana efficient way to put the game away.
Yeah, a 1-lander here from Braverman, and his deck can function decently well on 1 land, but still could use more here.
Really hoping to find a 2nd copy. This is the kind of hand that has the really good early aggression, especially if Braverman can find that 2nd land to develop this Dreadhorde Butcher early. We may see a quick win on Braverman's side.
Mm-hmm. Looks like a Glass Casket as some early interaction here for Braverman. Maybe debating if he wants to fire that off here or save it for a potential Dreadhorde Butcher.
Right, and Baylock recognizes that these Scorpions aren't really doing that much with Baylock's life total as high as it is, so we see Deshaun deciding to save it for a bigger threat later.
What do you make of using just playing Glass Casket instead of Growth Spiral into Glass Casket, which he could do, but it would cost him 2 life?
I think he's just trying to really conserve life here, and I respect that approach in a lot of ways. The extra land may not even end up being relevant on the following turn if Baylock doesn't think he's going to draw a land here.
So we'll give Baylock some much needed life. Get him a lot closer to that Planet Cleansing, which could really put the game out of reach immediately. But then failing that to Nissa, to Tamiyo, to whatever else he has designs on here.
Right, this is a situation where maybe if Baylock had Growth Spiraled last turn, we would see Nissa coming down this turn and really putting the game out of reach. But as it stands, it's hard to really hate Baylock's position at this point.
Here is Robber the Rich, and unsurprisingly, Braverman has fewer cards in hand than Baylock does, so he'll get something for free off of that, but if it's something like a Nissa or a Planet Cleansing or something, he might not be able to cast it, and he might not even want to.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine Braverman hitting anything too particularly value with Robber of the Rich. That's ironically the awkward side of Braverman being a little bit landlight against what kind of feels like a ramp deck.
That was his plan all along, Emma. And yeah, Borrow, we won't even get to see what the Robber would hit. Petty Theft bouncing it back to the hand. Ooh, and there's a sick land. I guess having to Planet Cleansing away your own Glass Casket is a little unfortunate.
Seeing now if that's what's actually going to happen. That's the real question.
He's tapping lands. It looks like Nissa instead, perhaps, leaving open that Triumph.
Right, and that just makes a ton of sense here. Just developing onto the battlefield, you don't need to actually do anything to kind of react to what Braverman's doing if your cards are just more powerful pound for pound.
Yeah, so that, I guess, Claim the Firstborn has a target now.
That's true. That is going to be a way. Just claim the firstborn plus robber of the rich does threaten to go ahead and kill this Nissa.
Or I mean, so if you claim the 3/3, you play the robber, you're getting him for 7, putting him to 6, and you have 2 Scorpion triggers. That's that I don't know. It starts to add up.
Right. It is certainly not a given what you want to do in this position.
I wonder what the name is here from Talia.
Collector of Tales.
Thank you. It's not a moon sage or a field researcher or
no, unfortunately, just Collector of Tales.
Not
I
one
wish
of the,
it was a field researcher.
Not the Planeswalker deck 6-mana one that's unplayable and whose name no one knows.
Whoa, 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 whoa! You don't think I know the name of that Tomio?
I forgot who I was talking to.
Look, I don't, but I wish you wouldn't assume that I don't.
Field Researcher is a banger for sure.
Big fan of that card.
So yeah, I'm curious to see if Braverman just chooses to take down the Nissa or if he's going upstairs.
Right, we see the claim here, and it's all going to kind of come down to how he wants to approach it from this point. It's hard to imagine that he really wants to just shove all in on the life total when there's an Uro hanging out in the graveyard, but it's possible he may just see the writing on the wall and think that he needs to just go upstairs.
Okay, everything at Nissa. Well, I guess one Scorpion gets to go somewhere else.
Right.
I'm shuffling around some attackers here. And that one goes to Tamia. Anything sweet off the robber?
Believe that was just a land hit.
That forest will not be returning to Baylock's side of the board. And this is what we mentioned, right? Elspeth Conquers Death with 0 legal targets among Braverman's 6 non-land permanents.
Yeah, no, this Elspeth Conquers Death, this is not the battlefield that you want to draw that card against.
You have to take the highs with the lows, you know? You don't just get to high roll that one.
Right. Sometimes you hit their 6-drop. Sometimes you, I guess you have to settle for bringing back the Uro in your graveyard instead.
I guess it's a Nissa with Suspend 2 at this point. And worth noting now as well, with that Temple Garden being stolen and then dying and Nissa falling as well, Braverman currently does not have triple white if he wants to fire off that Planet Cleansing.
Oh, well, how about this? Tommy creating a Nissa with Suspend, no Suspend. You just cast a Nissa.
I guess that works too.
And, you know, it feels like Baylock is just... He's in the exact same spot he was a moment ago, but Braverman is down a Claim the Firstborn.
Yeah, with that in mind, I wonder if you are meant to just go upstairs, deal as much damage and life loss as you can, and I guess hope to draw something like a Mayhem Devil, Claim the Firstborn to deal those final points.
Oh, and Robert just exiling another land. It felt like that was maybe the way that Braverman could get back in this, is if this hit something like a Brazen Borrower, maybe an Elspeth Conquers Death, who knows? But hitting a land, it was basically just a chump attack.
Yeah, if we're talking about swingy high variance cards that lead to good stories, let me introduce you to Robber the Rich. That's really defines feast and famine.
Oh, how do you two know each other?
I guess the Priest of Forgotten Gods does now have text with Tamio off the board.
Well, they do lose 2 life.
Yes.
And Braverman would draw a card.
We did see, I think this came up in one of the player stores, where this exact interaction of Priest versus Tamio, where the player had 2 priests targeting themselves to get the sacrifice and still like smuggle in the life loss through the back door.
Interesting, interesting.
Oh, and Elspeth conquering death even harder, it turns out.
It turns out death, not a cheap creature or permanent at all, and Elspeth will not be conquering it today.
Honestly, after seeing Elspeth at work, I'm not sure I'm even so scared of death anymore.
All right, Jack Sparrow.
And this may be the pause on the arena interface as your opponent decides which 5 cards to exile to escape their Uro.
Yep, you always just see the little white line flicking in the graveyard, and you know what's about to happen.
I do miss the Magic Online, cards in graveyard starting to highlight in orange as, you knew exactly what was going on.
Yup. This is just such a brutal spot for Braverman. It's hard to imagine him coming back in this scenario.
Yeah, is there even a plausible sequence?
Well, no.
Okay, well, you really got my hopes up for a second and a half.
Yeah, no, so this is a situation where theoretically Preach of the Forgotten Gods could maybe end up drawing into something. We're going to see Braverman likely get to chump block here and then shoot Baylock for 6-ish. But that's still just going to have Baylock at 8 to 11 life once this Uro gets to attack. And that's just such a hard spot for one of this low to the ground Rakdos aggro deck to be able to kill from without some huge card like Embercleave getting involved.
Mm-hmm. Even Claim the Firstborn on Uro, which normally is the kind of big swing that can decide these games. I don't even think that would be close to enough here.
No, absolutely not. Not especially with a bunch of 1/2s. This isn't a deck that's really built with that card in mind, and you can tell that it really is a deck trying to win on the back of incremental advantages, and you can see how those decks struggle once they've fallen behind. Normally, this deck may be built to prey on a Bant deck, but this version of it with Dream Trawler, Uro, Planar Cleansing is just incredibly aggressive, hostile to aggressive decks.
Yeah, it reminds me of the approach that these sacrifice decks have to take against Team of Reclamation of, if my opponent gets to cast their 5 drops and their 6 drops, it's going to be a real uphill battle, so I just have to shove. I have to put my chips in the middle, get some damage in, and hope that I can close out the game somehow.
Exactly. You just have faces the place.
Yes.
Smork, if you will. Ooh, is that a Brazen Borrower taking one for the team?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if that cat had showed up a few turns ago, maybe this would be a different game. But as it is, the cat is begging to be let back in. Long past its curfew.
Yeah, it's possible that a Mayhem Devil off the top could end up changing things here. But I think that's about what it would take. It's really close, because you do get to sacrifice a ton of permanents between 2 ovens and a cat. But it really would take something in that vein for Braverman to have a shot here.
I saw the black-red symbols and, got excited for a second. I think Devilwood, doing some correct math there, I think that gets you to... Maybe it's enough. It might be exactly enough, which would be incredible. But no, I think it's maybe one short. Either way, an academic question at this point is, it's not a Mayhem Devil, it is a Dreadhorde Butcher. Either one of those would have got Ether Gusted. And it's taken a while for Baylock to put this game away, but I think that is about to officially conclude.
Right, and this is exactly what Nissa does, is it makes it just feel like you are running uphill against an opponent who's constantly getting more resources and has a card that, on top of making your life harder, makes their life so much easier by just giving so much more mana.
And yeah, here's the cleansing.
Oh, that gets all the blockers out of the way.
And
How
there's
about
no
that?
yeah, and there's no trickery you can do with, like parking the cat in the graveyard and then you can sacrifice the food token later, because Planet Cleansing gets a food token too. It gets everything.
Oh,
Except for
yeah.
all of those 3/3s.
Well, it also is going to unlock this Dreadhorde Butcher, so that'll make it'll take Braverman longer to die. So Braverman's got that going for him.
Yeah, Baylock is the one playing with this food here.
And I do actually like Braverman just bringing the cat back rather than sacrificing the food for life. This is just identifying that Braverman knows he needs to try and cheese Baylock out of this game, and so he's paying 2 life to deal 1 point to to Baylock rather.
And it looks like Baylock may be about to pay 0 to deal 9 to Braverman by my count. Or he just goes for Uro. That's perfectly fine too.
And this is just saying, okay, well, there's a chance that you draw X card into Y card to deal 8. Let's make it to where you have to deal 11, because really the clock isn't changing that much.
It's Dragantha time. And hey, if you want to target for Elspeth Conquers Death,
you know what? Baylock will pass.
A big shiny elk will do it for you.
And it looks like with this attack step, Michael Braverman goes down, and we are going to